Goodfriend, the former Deputy Staff Secretary for President Bill Clinton, and Republican strategist Brad Blakeman. He's also a former senior staff advisor to President George W. Bush. Gentlemen, thanks for being with us.
Thanks. Thank you.
All right, let's talk about Wisconsin a little bit, particularly this half-empty auditorium that we saw in Wisconsin last night. Brad, is this a sign of things to come for Donald Trump, or is this going to be isolated to Wisconsin where the voters there haven't really taken to Donald Trump?
Well, let's see. But certainly in other venues, we've saw long lines for Donald Trump. This could be, let's see if this is an anomaly or this is something that is going to continue. Perhaps Trump's star is fading. But what I will say about today is that Wisconsin is to Cruz what Florida is to Rubio. It's a must-win state. And if Cruz takes Wisconsin, as Karl Rove properly pointed out, the percentages go up. For Trump, he now would have to win over 60% of delegates remaining in order not to have a contested election. So if Cruz wins tonight, more likely than not, that's where we're going.
Well, I think Ted Cruz would say that I've done a better job in Wisconsin than Marco Rubio did in Florida.
Yes.
The poll numbers would suggest that. But David, what do you think about that strategy? I mean, do you think this, if Cruz does win Wisconsin and wins enough where he gets, most of the delegates, keeping Trump to maybe less than 10 delegates in Wisconsin, does that ensure that there will be a contested convention?
Well, I don't have anything new to say on that front. I mean, I think that it's more symbolic than mathematical. But I will say this. In full disclosure, I was born, raised, and educated in Wisconsin. I'm from Madison. I went to Beloit College. I went to summer camp up north. I know the state very well. And the interesting thing about Wisconsin voters is that both the rules of the voting, that is, it's an open primary. You don't have to be registered in a particular party in order to vote in that primary. And the nature of the people, the fact that Wisconsinites always like to buck the national trend. If you go there and say the nominees are going to be Clinton and Trump, don't be surprised if the people who win Wisconsin are Sanders and Cruz, just to spite the national trend. I think that's really a characteristic of the Wisconsin voter. Moreover, both progressivism and conservatism have deep roots in Wisconsin. This is the state on the conservative side that brought forth Tommy Thompson, Paul Ryan, and historically it also was the home of Joe McCarthy. On the progressive side, it's the home of Russ Feingold and Gaylord Nelson and Bob LaFollette. So both traditions have deep, deep roots in Wisconsin. And I think voters take their responsibility very, very seriously. It's not necessarily reflective, however, of the primary voters nationwide for that reason. I mean, these are quirky facets of Wisconsin. It may be that we're better off looking at Wisconsin as a bellwether for the general election. In the last 9 elections, Wisconsin has always gone with the winner in the general, even if it takes a while for people to warm up to whoever the nominee is going to be. So I don't think we'd be wise to overstate the national implications of what comes out of Wisconsin at the primary level. I do think that when it comes to the general election, as Wisconsin goes, so goes the nation.
Brad, I want to ask you, though, a lot of people, and John's kind of downplayed this a little bit, but have put a lot of emphasis on Wisconsin that this could be the make or break. This is the final stop to try to stop Trump. Do you buy into that?
I think it's very important tonight what happens in Wisconsin. If there were to be an upset and Trump were to take Wisconsin, it would be, I think, very difficult to stop Trump. The question would be that 1237. It's all about math. But perception is reality, and with the perception, you get momentum. So Cruz could get some great momentum coming out of tonight if he wins handily, and I happen to think that's what's going to happen. And if it does, Kasich will stay in the race. Kasich is a spoiler, clearly. He's almost admitted to that. So the rule of thumb tonight is deny Trump. And I think that's going to happen.
All right. Kasich has talked about being in the delegate accumulation business. And what I was saying is that, the polls will hold up more than likely. It's
right.
We're not going to expect really any surprises out of Wisconsin. Cruz is expected to win. I think he will win. And it moves on to New York, where Donald Trump has a big lead in the polls. And that momentum that Brad spoke about, that's going to be the key part, and beating expectations as well. Gentlemen, stick around. We got more to come here.
Coming up next, Debbie Wasserman Schultz finds herself on the hot seat again, but probably on a forum she least expected. What she was asked about that we can't even technically say on air. We'll explain. Yes, we have David Goodfriend, the former Deputy Staff Secretary for President Bill Clinton, and Republican strategist Brad Blakeman. He's also the former Senior Staff Advisor to President George W. Bush. Thank you, gentlemen, for sticking around. You said it. He's not going to do it, right? He's not going to run, right, John? I mean,
not doing
David,
it right now.
I know how you feel about Kasich, and that concerns a lot of Democrats. Does Paul Ryan keep you up at night?
No, he doesn't. I think he would be a more formidable opponent than Donald Trump. But he doesn't keep me up at night because he still suffers from the same thing that the Republican Party does nationally, and that is on certain key issues with key demographics, whether it's immigration or women's rights or voting rights, they're out of step. And that's a problem for them in states that you got to win in order to win the presidency, states like Florida, Colorado, Ohio. I do think that implicit in your question is whether or not the sort of wise men of the Republican Party will get together and out of the smoky room will emerge a consensus candidate and everything's going to be fine. Can you just imagine what the Trump supporters would do in that scenario? Will Donald Trump at that point decide to run as an independent, as a spoiler, as Ross Perot did in 92 and 96? I mean,
but David, you've been to these conventions before. There are multiple layers of security. If you don't have credentials to get into the arena, you can't get anywhere close. I would imagine there would be protests somewhere off-site, but it would be miles away from where the convention actually is. And the people who are going to the conventions, they're all longtime GOP party regulars. They're not necessarily going to be Trump supporters.
Look, you're taking me too literally. I'm not saying it's going to be a bloodbath or there'll be violence. I'm just saying that it's not going to be that easy to wave a magic wand and somehow achieve unity among Republicans when you've basically told the largest vote getter, Donald Trump, to go pound sand. That is not going to be an easy scenario. Look, I'm not claiming that we Democrats have it any easier. Look, if Hillary Clinton is the nominee, it's going to be very, very important that she get the support of Bernie Sanders voters. Mm-hmm. And that's not like waving a magic wand either. But I would submit to you that at least if it's through a Democratic with a small d, a voting process, that she becomes the nominee by winning enough delegates, that's a far cry from having a brokered convention where somebody who has not even been running gets anointed by a few wise men. That's a recipe, it seems to me, that's a recipe for disaster for the Republicans going into the
superdelegates.
Yeah, I want to let Brad weigh in here. Is that a recipe for disaster if Ryan gets his name thrown in, whether he wants it or not?
Yeah, it would be, and for several reasons. But we don't have a brokered convention. If anything, we'll have a contested convention. The two are completely different. And by the way, we don't have smoke-filled rooms anymore. If this is going to be decided by the delegates in the rank and file, unlike the Democrats who have superdelegates, which are a hedge against the rank and file of their own party. This is going to be a very open process, probably one that is going to turn off a lot of people if it goes beyond a third ballot, and that's where things can really get crazy. People don't like to watch how sausage is made, but they love sausage. And people may never eat sausage again if they see it made. So I think the Republicans would be in for a hard time if we go beyond the third ballot and it's not one of the three that are in the race right now. And if Brian would come in at the last minute, you would demoralize those millions of people who voted in primaries and caucuses, and it would be very hard to unite in a general election.
Yeah, I do not think it's going to be Paul Ryan, even though, and I've been somewhat obsessed with these offshore gambling sites that allow people to vote or to bet on political campaigns. But as of late,
you participate in
Paul Ryan is now in fourth place on a lot of those betting sites in terms of the odds of who is going to be the GOP nominee. It's going up. So that goes to show you that there is some sort of momentum. And I've gone through and I've parsed all of his words, all his responses. They're very fiery, but there's nothing. I can't say that he's left himself some outs just in case it comes to this. I don't think it's going to happen, but he's left himself some outs.
Can I just suggest, going back to my Wisconsin roots here?
Yeah.
I think there is something to point out with respect to today's election in Wisconsin. You have Governor Scott Walker, who, although he's controversial, he's very popular among core Republican voters in Wisconsin. And you've got Paul Ryan, who is the highest-ranking House member of all from South Central Wisconsin. They are actively, it seems to me, trying to undermine a Trump victory in Wisconsin. The governor even endorsed Ted Cruz. So whether or not
Paul Ryan becomes the nominee or even throws his hat in the ring seems immaterial to me. He and the Republican establishment of Wisconsin are actively trying to stop Donald Trump from becoming the nominee, and that's very compelling to me. It means that if they succeed, their methods may be imitated in future states as the establishment there tries to
Let's
push
not
back.
forget Reince Priebus, also from Wisconsin as
Also
well.
from Wisconsin.
We heard from Mitch McConnell earlier today. He was asked about his so-called blood feud or bad blood, whatever it is, with Ted Cruz. He says he's not going to weigh into the personalities involved in the race, but we know he cares who the nominee is. He said that he hopes it's somebody that can win and appeal to a broad swath of America. And if you kind of read between the lines, the only candidate in the field right now that is able to do that is John Kasich. So, that goes to your point, David. It does seem like there is still some undermining going on by these GOP bigwigs in Washington, D.C. and in other places around the country. Brad, what do you think about that?
Well, look, everybody has their opinion as to who they like. The question is whether or not their opinions matter. And in a contested convention, it's the rank and file. It's the delegates who come from the states, and they're going to be the ones who determine what happens. It's not going to be people in the back room, smoke-filled room. It's not going to happen that way. It doesn't happen that way. So I think that be careful for Republicans what you wish for, because if you don't like any of the three that are running now, we're not going to be able to get to a general election with a candidate that can win if we come out so divided.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all the video montages that they play at these conventions, I don't envy that person who has to put it all together and come up with some central theme on how to unite the party.
You mean you don't want Reince Priebus' job right now?
Reince Priebus' job. I don't want Paul Ryan's job either, because he's going to be the one, he's the chairman of the convention. He's going to be up there with the gavel presiding over these rule changes and these votes.
Can I just jump in
Tell you
here?
what job I want. I want to be the FBI director.
Oh, Brad.
Always got to get that in there, Brad. That was nice play.
that
Nice play. We'll leave it at that. David, don't worry. We'll get you back. You'll have your turn.
Thank you, gentlemen. Just ahead, while Scott Baio continues to create buzz with his home-brewed Trump movement, our next guest shares an in-depth look into the most unorthodox campaign in political history. We're, of course, talking about Donald Trump's. Discover what's behind Operation Trump next, and there's still time to weigh in on Scott Baio's #Trump.